So I'd like to begin with two verses that were written by Shinran Shonin. Shakyamuni Buddha states that even with his unhindered eloquence, the adornments of the land of happiness cannot be fully expounded. So take refuge in Amida, the inexpressible Buddha. Those who, hearing Amida Buddha's name, rejoice in it with reverence and praise, receive its treasure of virtue. The great benefit acquired with one utterance is supreme. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. So some of you know that I began my career as a copywriter, as someone who writes words. Particularly in advertising, we used to talk about taking something that's very complex and making it very, very simple. Something you can fit in a 30-second television ad. So what is the most important thing? What is the essence of it? And so as writers, we pride ourselves on the ability to pick exactly the right word to communicate exactly the right nuance. So words are very precise, are very accurate. And we spend incredible amounts of time trying to figure out where the comma should go, or should we break the line here, etc., etc., etc. So you can imagine for me, as someone who prides himself as being a writer, the idea that there's a Buddha, that Amida Buddha is inexpressible, is kind of a hard one for my ego to get over. But when you read stuff like this, right, so Shakyamuni Buddha, the Buddha, even with his unhindered eloquence, with the eloquence of a Buddha, he cannot fully describe the adornments of the land of happiness. The land of happiness is Sukawati, or what we call the Pure Land in the Japanese tradition. So take refuge in Amida, the inexpressible Buddha, the Buddha that cannot be expressed. And take refuge in the Pure Land, whose beauty cannot be described in words. The interesting part of these two verses is not so much that Amida cannot be explained, but rather in the second verse where it says, those hearing Amida Buddha's name rejoice in it with reverence and praise, receive its treasure of virtues. The great benefit acquired with one utterance is supreme. So let's look at that individually. Those who hearing Amida Buddha's name, so hearing the name of Amida Buddha, so hearing Namo Amida Butsu, right? So those who hear the name and then rejoice in it, rejoice in the name, rejoice in hearing the name with reverence and praise. Right? These people, right? So someone who hears the name of Amida Buddha, hears Namo Amida Butsu, and rejoices in hearing the name with reverence and praise, receives the virtue, the treasure of its virtues. So all of the virtues included in Namo Amida Butsu and Amida Buddha's name, the person who hears it and rejoices in it, right, receives the treasure of all of these virtues. And the great benefit acquired with one utterance is supreme. There is no comparison to it. I've underlined the word rejoice in the notes that Shinran puts on this verse. He remarks that rejoice, that to rejoice is here. So the first part, kang, kangi, so kang is to rejoice in body. And then gi, the second part of the word kangi, is to rejoice in mind. So to rejoice with one's body and rejoice with one's intellect, with one's mind, is kangi. So all you have to do, right, if you follow this scripture, all you have to do is hear Namo Amida Butsu, hear the name, right, and then rejoice in it with reverence and pride, and praise, and then you will receive the treasure of its virtues. And the great benefit acquired with one utterance. So saying Namo Amida Butsu just one time, you acquire the great benefit. And the great benefit is birth in the Pure Land, birth in the land of happiness. And that's it. Okay, so I didn't have to go to school. It was all in there. So it's a simple formula, right? So that if you look at it from this perspective, you may have heard the expressions mompo, which is to hear the Dharma, to hear the name, to hear Namo Amida Butsu, hear the Nembutsu. and then nembutsu, right, which is usually the practice of saying the name. So if you look at hearing the name as monpo, to hear the Dharma, if you hear the name, if you hear Namo Amida Butsu, you receive the treasure of its virtues. All of the virtues that Amida Buddha accumulated, suddenly become yours. And to utter the name, to say the Dharma, nembutsu, to be mindful of the Dharma, to hold Amida in your mind, this is to acquire the great benefit of Shinjin, the trusting heart. And Shinjin is the true cause of birth in the Pure Land. Right? So when you hear the name and you rejoice in it, in mind and body, when you say the name, even just one time, right, you acquire this great virtue, the great benefit of Shinjin, so assurance of birth in the Pure Land. So hearing the name, as we've explained before, is to not only listen to the Dharma, but to hear it, to internalize it, to make it your own, to make the teachings your own. When this happens, you utter the name, you say Namo Amida Butsu, and this is the acquisition of the great benefit of Shinjin. So to say Namo Amida Butsu, to be free of doubt, enjoying gratitude that you are saved, this is Shinjin, and this is the true cause of birth in the Pure Land. So Shinjin comes to us from Amida Buddha. It's not something that we earn through our own self-efforts. So those who, hearing Amida Buddha's name, rejoice in it with reverence and praise, receive its treasure of virtues. The great benefit acquired with one utterance is supreme. So that's really it. All you have to do is just listen and then hear the name. And this brings us to utter the name, to say the Dharma, to say the Nembutsu, and acquire the great benefit of Shinjin, the entrusting heart. So in one paragraph, right, let me flip back to this slide here. So monpo and Nembutsu, these are the two doctrinal elements in terms of practice, right? So it's just having the opportunity to hear the Nembutsu and then to make it your own, and then saying the Nembutsu in gratitude and joy. And that's really it. So it is the simplest of all the Buddhist teachings, and yet it's the most difficult. And so if you look at it, right, from a critically thinking perspective, say, well, why should that work? Right? Why should hearing the name have such a profound effect? Why should just saying Namo Amida Butsu, saying the name of Amida Buddha, why would this have such a profound effect on me? It's kind of like looking at an elephant and only seeing the different parts, but not the whole. So here's some of the different parts, right? We've talked about monpo, about hearing the Dharma. We've talked about nembutsu, saying the Dharma. We've talked about how monpo means to make the nembutsu your own, right? To receive this teaching, to receive this truth, and to rejoice, and to sing praises of what you've discovered, and to hold it with reverence. And this is really the feeling that we get with the nembutsu. So nembutsu is really hard to put into words, but it's something you can experience and something you feel, and you will, have no doubt when you experience this transformation. So today's theme, today's topic, right? Again, it always comes back to just saying Namo Amida Butsu. The more we say Namo Amida Butsu, the more that other people hear Namo Amida Butsu. The more that other people hear Namo Amida Butsu, the more they receive the teaching, and they receive it in joy and gratitude. So I think, the message for today is that if we think about Shinjin as being the true cause of birth in the Pure Land, the other term that comes up is ojo, so to go and be born in the Pure Land. It's kind of an interesting construction, because it does say, ojo does say to go and then to be born. So to go to be born into the Pure Land. So this is the third verse that I wanted to introduce today. Through great love, which is Amida's directing of virtue for our going forth, we attain great compassion, which is Amida's directing of virtue for our return. If not for the Buddha's directing of virtue, how could we realize enlightenment in the Pure Land? So this talks about two things which are unique to Shinran's interpretation of the teaching. So Shinran's teachings are distinctive in this respect, that when you look at Shinjin, there's two aspects. One is also, so to go to be born in the Pure Land. And the other is Genso, to return to this world after being born in the Pure Land, to guide others. So to go and to come back. And both of these, right, are caused by Amida Buddha. So again, so great love and great compassion. So Shinjin, so Amida's compassion and wisdom, also in Genso, so for sending us to be born in the Pure Land and for having us come back. Both of these are manifestations of Amida's great compassion and great wisdom, which are used metaphorically as great love and great compassion. So it is through great love, which is Amida's directing of virtue for our going forth, we attain great compassion, which is Amida's directing of virtue for our return. And if not for the Buddha's directing of virtues, how could we realize enlightenment in the Pure Land? So this is the key distinction here, that when we look at Amida's directing of virtue as great love, right, and then our return to this world is Amida's directing of virtue as great compassion, that everything is a result of Amida Buddha's directing of virtue to us, guiding us and assuring us of birth in the Pure Land. So we are brought to hear the name of Amida Buddha, the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, through the working of Amida's great love in our lives. So think about the causes and conditions that brought you to this teaching, that brought you to Namo Amida Butsu. It's quite remarkable when you reflect on it. So, and then we are inspired to say Namo Amida Butsu through the working of Amida's great compassion in our lives. So we gratefully receive the benevolence of Amida's great love and great compassion as Shinjin, the heart that can entrust in Amida, the name, the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, Butsu Namanda, Butsu Namanda, Butsu Namanda. Nam.